Have you found Proverbs to be catchy? As in the way they're worded, makes them easy to remember? I think they're not only catchy, but as I said in that very first sermon to kick the series off, they're actually so practical. Remember how I said Proverbs covers most, if not all, of life's situations? Well, for instance, last week I was invited by my 6-year-old to play Phase 10. I accepted the offer and immediately began to talk trash. I'm the king of trash talk, at the very least in my house. I started working a psyop on her. You're not going to win. You might as well quit now. You don't stand a chance. You are not going to win. Prepare to be crushed. I'm the king of Phase 10. So while I was going on about how badly she was going to lose and how horrible of an experience it was going to be for her, I heard a voice coming down the hallway, like one crying out in the desert. It was my 13-year-old. And from her bedroom, overhearing this trash-talking session, she cried out, "Pride goes before a fall. Pride goes before a fall." To which I tossed my head back in laughter at such foolishness. Remember how I said Proverbs is true? So after losing 5 straight hands, I was beginning to believe there was something to this adage, pride goes before a fall. I really cannot for the life of me understand how a 6-year-old is so good at cards. I mean it, like whether it's Uno or Play 9 or Phase 10 or No Limit Texas Hold'em. I mean, it's like they just kill it every single time. 6-year-olds. Proverbs not only instructs us on matters of humility, but Proverbs also speaks to another important issue in life, the issue of friendship. Our sermon title today is The Wisdom of Friends. And there's maybe 2 senses in which you can interpret that, and I mean it in both ways. And the first way would be that it's the wisdom friends offer us. And if our study through Proverbs is to gain wisdom and to grow in wisdom and to be wise, more wise, friends are invaluable for such an endeavor. But I also mean it in the sense that having friends shows your wisdom. Choosing friends and choosing them wisely shows wisdom. The wisdom of having friends, right? So maybe I should begin by posing a question. Do you have a friend? Or do you have friends? Not Facebook friends, not someone even that you just say hi to at church on Sunday morning, but a friend. In his book, The Problem with Happiness, Dennis Prager says, quote, "I have been taken aback to learn how many people do not have close friends." And he goes on to say, "A happier life necessitates finding and making close friends, yet few adults make finding friends a priority." End quote. The priority of friendship is actually something human beings have recognized all throughout history. For instance, the ancient Cicero wrote this imaginary conversation between a guy named Laelius, where he told his much younger audience, quote, listen to this, "I can only urge you to rank friendship above all other human concerns." C.S. Lewis said friendship is unnecessary, like philosophy, like art. It has no survival value. Rather, it is one of those things that gives value to survival. Polonius said in Shakespeare's Hamlet, quote, "The friends thou hast and their adoption tried, grapple them to thy soul with hoops of steel." Thomas Jefferson spoke of John Adams as a friend, and he said in one letter to another person, quote, "Adams has a heart formed for friendship in all its finest feelings," end quote. We would do well to form our hearts the same and to learn the lifelong art of friendship. In a social media world where everybody's supposedly so connected, I urge you to emphasize friendships and to be a devoted friend. Be a wise pick for someone who is looking for a friend. Find, as Pastor Ray so wisely chose this morning, this passage, find your Jonathan and be his David. So here's a couple things from Proverbs. I think there's about 5 or 6 things I want to pull out from Proverbs regarding friendship. Okay? Number 1, the wise choose friends wisely. The wise choose friends wisely. So if you're in Proverbs, go to chapter 12, please. Chapter 12, verse 26. The righteous choose their friends carefully. The righteous choose their friends carefully. And the word for choose is interesting because it means to spy out or to examine. It's like looking something over before buying it. It's like the Israelites when they went into the promised land and they spied out, they examined the land prior to going in and taking possession of it. So there's this idea that Proverbs gets at where we spy out and examine someone before we make them our friends. We give careful thought to who we attach ourselves to in friendship, which is why I think another translation, the NET, says it this way: the righteous person is cautious in friendship. Seems pretty common sense, don't you think? That's why pagan philosophers also thought such of the same things. When entering into friendship, one said, quote, "You must judge before loving, not love before judging." The wise Christian wisely chooses friends. Don't choose people who are popular because they're popular and you hope that it will make you popular. Don't choose someone because you got an angle to get something from them and you're hoping that your only approach in this relationship is your hope that you can get things from them or get something out of them. It's like Proverbs 19:4 when it says, quote, "Wealth attracts many friends," or chapter 19, verse 6 when it says, "Everyone is the friend of the one who gives gifts," right? And it's saying that disparagingly of the insincerity of people who are only approaching a relationship, a friendship with someone because of what they can get out of it. We don't make friends with people because we think we can get things from them. It's so selfish and so manipulative. Choosing friends like that would reveal a lot about us. And that's just it. What is the reason that we enter into a friendship with someone? What is it? If you will, turn to 2 Samuel chapter 1, because I'm reminded of David and Jonathan, the epic friendship that they had in scriptures. 2 Samuel. You're like, can you tell me where that's at? It's after 1. The book of 2 Samuel opens up with David hearing of King Saul's death and his son, Jonathan, who was David's best friend, his death as well. And there's this great lament that David gives. And he goes on at the last half of chapter 1, just glorifying them in a song. And you get down to verse 25 and 26, and he says these famous words, "How the mighty have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies slain on your heights. I grieve for you, Jonathan, my brother. You were very dear to me. Your love for me was wonderful, more wonderful than that of women." And he's speaking about the friendship that Jonathan had with him, as Pastor Ray read this morning, also from the book of one of the books of Samuel, where he talks about how Jonathan just gave everything he had to David. He says, "I am yours." Loved him like his own soul. Loved David like he was his own soul. And that's just it, is in this relationship you see with David and Jonathan, you see this total devotion to each other, which we're going to get to in a few moments, but you see also just the kind of friendship they had shows us as an example how to enter into friendship, how to go about being the friend of someone. I love what Cicero says in his book, Living and Dying Well. He has this chapter on friendship. He says, quote, "We don't seek friendship with an expectation of gain, but we regard the feeling of love as its own reward." He calls friendship beautiful and natural, and he says, quote, "Friendship that is, it's friendship that is sought in and for itself." You're not angling with this person. There's a complete sincerity, just a complete openness, a complete desire for the friendship with that person, and a love for that person as your friend. I can't help but think how Cicero would have responded to the Old Testament had he had it in his hands and read about Jonathan and David. So the first point I'm trying to get across is this. Proverbs teaches us to be wise in how we choose friends, to have friends, but to go about choosing them wisely. And secondly, Proverbs teaches us that friends improve each other. Friends improve each other. So go back to Proverbs chapter 27, if you will. In Proverbs 27, these famous words, oftentimes the motto of a men's ministry, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." Wise friends improve each other's character, faith, and wisdom. Go to chapter 13, verse 20. Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20. And the first half of verse 20 says, "Walk with the wise and become wise." You see how when you choose wisely who your friends will be, the consequence of that will be you grow in wisdom yourself. Now, I would say that verse has a wide range of meanings from, hey, I'm going to walk with the wise and I'm going to get discipled by this person. I'm going to try and find a church where I can sit under good preaching and teaching of the Word of God. I'm going to be in an atmosphere where everybody here is aimed at living for Jesus Christ, walking in faith. Like all of that is, and that's wise, and I'm going to make a wise choice to put myself in those circumstances because it will influence me in a good way towards God and towards Jesus Christ. But I would say it specifically also has application in friendship, that walk in friendship with one who is wise. And in doing so, we also will grow in wisdom ourselves. You see how friendship improves the character, the wisdom, and the faith in our own lives. And hopefully it's reciprocal, that we would be that way with someone else. The kinds of friends we keep says a lot about us. If we make wise friends, we show our wisdom in that by itself. If I'm a fool, and I'm not saying I'm not, I can certainly show one way in which I am wise if I'm not wise in anything else. And that is, who are some wise people that I can begin to get up close to and learn from and benefit from. But we show our wisdom in who we choose who are wise people, but we also show our foolishness when we choose our companions foolishly. Who among us has not heard of 1 Corinthians 15:33 when it says, bad company corrupts good morals or character, right? If you surround yourself with fools, with people who are bad, who are corrupt, who are not aimed at living for God and do not walk in the fear of the Lord, you can guarantee that that external surrounding that you have is going to internally affect your morality and your character and the way you are inside as a person. We're familiar with the proverb, iron sharpens iron, and we know that we need each other to be sharpened. But I want you to notice in Proverbs 27, notice that wording, iron sharpens iron. Iron and iron. In other words, there's a kind of equality that needs to exist in a friendship. I would say, it's really, we would all say from 2 Corinthians, I think it's chapter 6, when God says, do not be unequally yoked, right? Like, oh my goodness, that applies to marriage. And every time, if we got a single person somewhere in this church, I'm like, do not get unequally yoked. Make sure anybody that you're considering as a prospective spouse, that you two would be equally yoked in the faith. Do not marry outside of the faith. But that is not necessarily explicitly the primary purpose of that passage. It's just talking about partnering with and yoking yourselves with unbelievers. And I would say what is applicable in marriage is also applicable in friendship. Your best friend should be someone who has faith like you and who has aimed their life like you towards Jesus Christ. David and Jonathan were not of different beliefs when it came to God. David and Jonathan, as best friends, were aimed in the same direction. They had the same feeling towards what Saul was doing. They were of one soul, you could say, in that regard, as some philosophers describe friendship, two bodies with one soul. The unity that's there. Iron sharpens iron. We should find people who equally love God in the Scriptures, who are equally devoted to the friendship, who equally contribute good things to the friendship, and as you will build them up, they will build you up. Our friends, if our friends are the bar hopping, party it down, cops getting called on them, drinking, revelry, selfish, fleshly, live for this world, have their morals shaped by the fashions and the cultural trends of this world, if those are the kinds of friends we keep, if they are the drama queens and the drama kings, and the world orbits around them, maybe we are unequally yoking ourselves in friendship. Or maybe we're not. Because maybe that's the way we are. And maybe our Christianity is more of a disguise for it. I say that to challenge. Hopefully it would be a check for some of us. You reveal a lot about yourself by the friends that you choose and the company that you keep. So what I'm getting at is that those who are wise have friendships where they improve each other. They improve each other's faith, godliness, wisdom, and character. And so it goes without saying, but the wise avoid making friends with fools. If you're in Proverbs 27, go to Proverbs 14. And look at Proverbs 14, verse 7. It says, "Stay away from a fool, for you will not find knowledge on their lips." The wise avoid making friends with the corrupt and the evil as well. Not just the fool, but the corrupt and the evil as well. Go to Proverbs chapter 1. Look at verse 10 and verse 15. From verse 10, like almost through the whole rest of the chapter, is one big thought, but these are two important ones. Verse 10, "My son, If sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. He's going to go on to describe them. And then verse 15. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths. And you can see a friendship application here, like be wise in the people with whom you walk life with. Be wise in who it is you decide you will go about doing things and activities with. Do not be enticed by sinful men to go down the paths of wicked and sinful scheming and plots and activities. And it's fascinating to me that the book of Proverbs, being written from the perspective of a father to a son, in the wide range and hundreds of different proverbs that are going to be given, ranging dozens upon dozens of different topics, the first thing that the father tells his son is to choose your company wisely. Before he gets to adultery, before he gets to how you spend your money, before he gets to your work ethic, before he gets to your integrity, before he gets to all these other things, before he gets to anything else, he says, choose your friends wisely. These are the people you avoid. And this is what's fascinating is Proverbs starts out like that. Did you know Psalms, the whole book starts out like that? Go to Psalm 1, verse 1. You're going to see this. These two books on wisdom, and the first thing out of their mouths, the first thing to give as wise advice is dealing with the company that you keep. So Psalm 1, verse 1, look what it says. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers. The very first words in Psalms have to do with the company that you keep. There's wisdom in choosing friends wisely, in the effort or part of the purpose being is that you improve each other. Like one of the things, we'll get to this, my last point is going to relate to marriage, but one of the things I say like about Annie and I in the marriage that we have is, one of my hopes is that at the end of our lives that she will be a better Christian woman for having been married to me. Like I hope that's one of the end goals, is that if she had not been married to me and she'd been married to some other slug, like I would have outdone all those slugs and helping her grow. And the same for me, that me being married to her, that in the friendship we have would be something that contributes to me being a better Christian man than had I not been married to her. That's the idea of we improve each other. And there's something of the same sort in a friendship that we have with someone else. That person's better because I was in their life, and I'm better because they were in my life. That's what the idea here is that I think, hopefully trying to drive out from Proverbs. So number three. Number three is the third point from Proverbs about wise friendships, is that the wise have devoted friendships. The wise have devoted friendships. So if you're, I don't know where you're at in the Bible, I'm back in Proverbs. And if you'll join me in Proverbs 17, I want you to see that the wise Christian makes devoted friendships. In Proverbs 17, verse 17, I love this first line in it. A friend loves at all times. A friend loves at all times. You see the devotion? Look at chapter 18, the very next chapter. Look at verse 24. One who has unreliable friends soon comes to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. And if you're in chapter 18, bounce back to chapter 27 and look at verse 10 with me. The first half of verse 10. Do not forsake your friend or a friend of your family. Do not forsake your friend or a friend of your family. If we're going to learn from Proverbs how to live wisely, then we need to form friendships where great devotion can be experienced, where we love at all times and are loved at all times, where we stick close and we are stuck close to. It's the kind of devotion seen in Job's friends in the first 7 days of his anguish, right? When you read the book of Job and all of that happens to Job, where he loses all 10 of his children, where all of his wealth is just swept away, where his buildings and his houses are destroyed, where his miserable wife, is left alive to continue making his life more miserable, and then he's plagued with boils from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. And he goes out and he sits outside the city and he sits in the trash pile and he's out there and he's just miserable, and his friends go to him. And it says that they go out to him and they just sit down with him. What do you say to him? You don't say anything. They did it right. They were silent for 7 days. They sat there with him, devoted to him. And if he didn't say anything, they weren't going to say anything. It's okay, you don't have to say anything, Job. And they were the picture, the perfect picture of friends who were devoted for 7 days. And they blew it on day 8, famously. We know that, right? They blew it from there on out. But had they continued what they did the first 7 days, they were the picture of devotion there. It's like David and Jonathan's devotion to each other. It's like their devotion. When after Jonathan in 1 Samuel chapter 20, you don't have to go there, I'll just explain it, where Jonathan was like, where David says, your dad's trying to kill me. King Saul's trying to kill me. He's like, no, I'll find out what his real plan is. So he says, here, you go hide, and I'll come back after I find out. He went and he found out his dad really was trying to kill his best friend David. So he goes back, and he finds David, and he says, you're right. He's trying to kill you. You have to leave. And they form a covenant as friends. And Jonathan says this to David as they let go, tears and hugs, embracing, and he's letting go. And he says, go in peace, David, for we have sworn friendship with each other in the name of the Lord. Like the song said, your love never fails. Thank you for that song. Beautiful song. Your love never fails. The devotion of a friend, the devotion of God, which we'll get to at some point talking about here. Or a bulwark never failing. How about that line? The devotion of our God. May we be bulwarks for our friends, and may our love never fail for our friends. Then we see, fourthly, that the wise in their friendships sacrifice for their friends. Now I'm going to hop out of Proverbs, and I'm going to get something parallel in John chapter 15. So if you will, go to John's Gospel chapter 15. Immediately you're feeling cheated. You're like, no, I came for Proverbs. No, I came for Proverbs. Don't worry. We are definitely going back to Proverbs. But John chapter 15. And in John chapter 15, this is chapter 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Are all that upper room discourse where it's the night before Jesus is crucified. It's the very night he's going to be betrayed. Judas is about to leave. Judas actually has left at this point. And in chapter 15, Jesus is speaking to the remaining 11 disciples, and he's telling them in verse 13, greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. To lay down one's life for one's friends. Friendship is characterized by love, and love is characterized by sacrifice, and there is nothing short of my faith and my character and my family that I would not sacrifice for my friends. Seems to be an application. Jesus gives us the picture that sacrifice is part of friendship. Staying right here in John 15, I want you to see one more point about friendship, which will lead us right back into Proverbs. And this fifth point is that the wise form friendships where they open up to their friends. So if you're in chapter 15, look at verse 14 and 15. He says, "You are my friends if you do what I command." So friendship with Jesus is based on our obeying his commands. I don't think I would quite extend that someone's friendship with me requires they obey what I command them. But in our friendship with God, that is part and parcel of being friends with God. But look at verse 15. There's a principle here. "I no longer call you servants, because a servant does not know his master's business. Instead, I'm elevating your status with me. I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you." And it's like you're getting out of this. I mean, there's a way to exegete that, right? And we can preach that and the primary meaning. But there is a principle there of friendship means disclosure, transparency, openness. You're brought into a privacy with me that people who are not my friends don't get. You were servants and you didn't know things as a servant. But I've brought you up out of being servants and brought you to be my friends. And that means I've opened up and brought you in to things that you couldn't know unless you were my friend. So part of friendship definitionally requires and means that there's openness with each other. There's not the fig leafing like in Genesis and the hiding, right? And one of the things that I do on the way in every Sunday morning, Evan and I come in early, and Evan will take my sermon manuscripts and he'll read the first sentence of every paragraph to me, just sort of help try and right into my brain. And then I ask him, I'm like, "Hey, what's one thing that stood out to you?" And this morning he said this point right here, that friends open up with each other. And he made a really interesting, it was interesting to me that stood out to him, and it stood out to me that it did, because it makes me think about how friends, and he says friends don't hide from each other. They don't hide themselves from each other. They don't keep secrets, so to speak, from each other. Listen, people can know things about me, but my friends have access that the rest of people don't. I open up with my friends like I won't with others. It's like Peter, James, and John were like the three that were part of Jesus' inner circle, and they got to know more than the rest of the other nine. They didn't get certain things. They didn't get to go up on the Mount of Transfiguration. They didn't go into the Garden of Gethsemane with Jesus, right? There were things they didn't get to know, didn't get to experience that Peter, James, and John all got to experience. It's like the Levites who were allowed to go further into the temple than the Gentiles, then the women, and then all the other tribes. Only the Levites were allowed to go into the holy place. And then even that, the one person, the high priest, was only allowed to go into the Holy of Holies, right? So my friends are let into the Holy of Holies in my life. Friends are open with each other. So you're like, yeah, but is that in Proverbs? Let's find out. Proverbs 27. So go from John to Proverbs 27. I love this proverb right here. It's challenging for me, but I do love it. Verse 10. Verse 9. Perfume and incense bring joy to the heart, and the pleasantness of a friend springs from their heartfelt advice. Notice that the pleasantness, the sweetness of your friend includes their heartfelt advice. And one of the things I'm learning from this is that to let friends have a voice into my life. In a friendship, there should be an openness with my friend, a freedom that I feel with them, unlike I would feel with anyone else. This person has access and freedom with me that other people don't. Someone can say something to me, and I'm just like, but if my friend says it to me, I'm like, come here closer. What? Tell me. You really think so? That's a decision, that's humbling. That's humbling. Because if you're like me, you don't like being told anything that might even be kindly, lovingly. Wounds from a who can be trusted? Friend. And it doesn't even have to be a wound. It could just be like, hey, I want to point something out. Reading the letters of Thomas Jefferson and John Adams to each other in their later years, it's a fascinating book to read. They describe this very thing of being completely open with each other. They had an absolute trust, they described, and respect for each other, which allowed them to have full revelation of their thoughts with the other person and their ideas, because they trusted the other person not to give those private letters to anybody to publish, which was a big problem in that day. And actually at the time, in this book, Jefferson was writing to Adams, and he says, they're about to publish some of my private letters for which they have not asked permission, and I full on don't give them permission to do it. He says, but what can I do? They're going to publish my private letters, and it's a complete embarrassment. Adams is like, I know exactly what you feel. He says, but you can have, look what he says this. He said, confidence of friendship is the most sacred. And Adams said to him, such abuses suppress the free communication of soul to soul. He says, you can bet your letters with me are safe. And so it allowed for, it's for our benefit these days, because to read their letters and the things that they say are just absolutely amazing. They knew nothing they said was going to make it back to the newspapers and wasn't going to get published in some book so somebody could make money off the private letters of Jefferson or Adams. Application. Give someone freedom to be open with you and even to bring challenges and criticisms. Find someone who you think pleasant in the way they give you advice in life. Find someone who does the same with you and gives you the same access and finds you delightful when you bring advice. The pleasantness of a friend, Proverbs 27 says, is in their heartfelt, earnest advice. Like, I may not take advice from everybody, but one thing I'm learning as I read this is I think what I'll do with friends is if they give me advice and I'm not too, whatever, it's okay advice, I think I would still put it into practice because it's my friend. And I would still adopt it because it's my friend. In other words, here's the thing. I'm not going to give everyone a voice into my life, but wouldn't I be a fool if I gave no one a voice into my life? And I'm wise if I choose people who are wise to be my friends, who can then have full liberty to speak wisdom into my life. It's an attitude that I adopt, that I may not like this person over here saying things to me, but if my friend says it, then my heart is wide open to what he says. I was reading this book, and this person says about this very issue, they articulate it better than I do. They said, let this be the first law of friendship. Seek only good from friends, do only good for the sake of friends, and don't wait to be asked. Be always attentive, banish hesitation, be ready to give advice freely, take seriously the good advice of friends, be ready to offer it openly, even forcefully if the occasion demands. Sounds like Proverbs 27 to me. And then he says this, and also be ready to follow advice when it's offered. Like, that's a liberty that we give to a friend that we don't give to other people. You give me advice, I am way more likely to follow it from a friend than I would be from someone who's not a friend, even if it's the same advice. That may sound irrational, that may not sound logical, but we're talking about friendship here. The wise, I'll end with this thought. The wise make their marriage a friendship. The wise make their marriage a friendship. So this is a bonus point. And this one doesn't come from Proverbs, but it does come from a very interesting book. Song of Songs. Very carefully, find your way to Song of Songs. Be very careful what you opened up into there before. I've used this book as an illustration before, and I told you what happened to me before. Be careful here. So Song of Songs, chapter 5. And my point here, keep in mind as we go here, chapter 5, is that the wise make their marriage a strong friendship. And chapter 5, verse 16 is the woman, the wife, speaking about the man, her husband. And the chapter is all about this, but here she ends it with this. Chapter 5, verse 16. His mouth is sweetness itself. Apparently she hadn't smelled his morning breath. He is altogether lovely. This is my beloved. This is my friend. It wasn't just her husband. It wasn't just her lover. It was all of that and her friend. Husbands and wives should be best friends. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. The two shall become one. Make marriage a friendship. Let me make 2 quick points. First of all, I don't think this requires a lot of justification. But this first point I would make is you shouldn't be trying to make this kind of friendship with the opposite sex. And most especially if you're married. If you are a man, you have no business making this kind of friendship with another woman. If you're a woman, you have no business making this kind of friendship with a man. You can delude yourself all you want about how it's platonic and blah, 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 blah. I don't want it. Look, I'm 44. I'm old. I've seen stuff. It's just foolish. If it has to be justified to you, you're already thinking foolishly. In your heart, if you're agreeing, like, absolutely, that's totally wise. You're wise, at least on that point. Secondly, let me urge you this. If you're married, begin making your spouse your best friend. Begin building into the foundation of your relationship with your husband or your wife friendship. And it doesn't matter if you've been married a short time or a long time. Build that friendship the way Proverbs describes friendship. And then, however, if you're not married, don't look for a spouse. Don't narrow it down to how they look, how much they make, or how successful they are, like all these other things. Let me say this. Look for a friend. Does this person that you've met, or is the person you're trying to meet the kind of person that you would want to be friends with? Would they be a wise choice to be friends with? Now, take out the romance, right? Because the romance is only going to carry you up to getting married. That's going to make you make the big mistake of getting married to him. But if afterwards you don't have enough of a friendship to keep anything going, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, everything I liked about him. Okay, we'll edit that out of the video. We won't put that out in public. But you know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? It's foolish. It's foolish to on the basis of lust and the basis of feelings, to decide to attach yourself permanently for this life to another person in the covenant of marriage. And I think that what we find in the scriptures is a strong foundation of friendship. This person is my lover. This person is my wife. This person is my friend. And may they be a better person for being married to me, and may I be a better person for being married to them. And may the devotion of friendship reach its peak and its pinnacle in a marriage. May the wisdom of friendship be seen best in a marriage. Conclusion. A wise Christian life demands we make friends and make them wisely. Who are your friends? Let me urge on you, along with urging on me, the pursuit of deep and real friendships. Abraham was called in the book of James a friend of God. He was God's friend because he believed God. And of all the friendships that you may or may not make, the most important one to make is the one you make with God. In the book of Colossians, it says, that before Jesus Christ, we were enemies of God, hostile towards him in our minds, not his friend at all. But when we come to Jesus Christ, we become God's friend, and God becomes ours. Jesus Christ came into this world as an act of friendship, as an offer of friendship with a wicked and rebellious humanity. And I hope today that you would see the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, where he offered his own. What did he say? He said, no greater love has anyone than this, than to lay down his life for his friends, right? And then what does Romans 5 say? It says that, hold on, it'll come to me. Verse 8. But God demonstrates his own love for us in this, that while we were yet sinners, not friends, while we were sinners, Christ died for us. The very God who created the universe and created you in it offers you his friendship. And that friendship is available through the blood of Jesus Christ shed on the cross where he died. And so today, if Jesus Christ, in order to make you his friend, went to the cross, then the response for you today is to also go to the cross, see him there, believe on him, and become a friend of God, like Abraham was, by believing in Jesus Christ. Do not remain an enemy of God. Do not remain someone who is alienated from God and is hostile towards God and has God hostile towards you for your sin. Today, be reconciled to him and brought into a divine friendship through belief in Jesus Christ. Father in heaven, thank you for your love for us. Thank you, Father, that you love us perfectly, and that on the cross of Jesus Christ, you put forth friendship and offered to be our friend. Father in heaven, I pray that each and every one of us here would join in the train of Abraham, that train of people who have become your friends, having cast down our pride and knelt before the cross of Jesus Christ to receive his friendship and to receive his forgiveness. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.